Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another video. So today I wanted to talk with you about a topic that might be a little taboo in some ways to some certain people, but I think it's very important to get on the same page as reality. So there's this misconception in the indie space that has been here for a while that somehow it's easy to make money, like it's this get rich quick pathway that, leads to glory and fame. This is not at all the case. And it's usually those who are new to game development or kind of working on their very first game that often fall into this misunderstanding because it's easy to get caught up in the romance of game dev. You fall into this kind of delusion about all the money you will make and all the people you will impress. And I'm sure anyone who is working on games or in the game space will kind of understand that a little bit, because we all at some point in the past may have had an element of that, but many of us outgrew that with time and maturity. So let's put this to bed once and for all. Indie game dev in its current state is not some get-rich-quick pathway to fortune. In fact, statistically, your chances of finding any success, let alone sustainable income that's going to support your efforts long term, is very, very slim. Have no disillusions about this. This is the reality. Not too long ago, there was a study which looked at how much games on Steam make on average over like a span of 4 years, I think it was. And I can't remember the exact number, but statistically they had worked it out to be something like $750 over a span of 4 years or something. Now this is like a statistical average, so often it skews because of AAA is in that space as well. But still, the numbers were a bit kind of alarming. And anecdotally, I have a lot of friends who are making games and have games on Steam, and it's not that far from the truth, to be quite frank. So imagine you worked on a game for months or years even, and then made $1,000. Like you got to factor in tax, publisher fees, all the expenses that were required to assemble the game. It's not looking good. If you spent that same amount of time, collecting plastic bottles on the street for recycling, you'd probably come out on top. Also, you'd probably be in better physical shape because, game dev is a pretty taxing profession on your body and your mind. We fall into these long sedentary flow states for hours at a time, forgetting to drink water and pumping ridiculous amounts of coffee into our system and, straining our eyes at 3 a.m. It's not so glamorous. I was at a indie game meetup in my city a few months ago, and I spoke to several new aspiring, enthusiastic indie game developers. And some of these were presenting themselves as these, businessy marketing types, the kind of characters I'm talking about. And I was rather astounded at how many of them still thought that it was going to be easy for them to make money. One guy was even kind of scheming and trying to impress me with his kind of financial projections, telling me, oh, look, he's going to make this game and it's going to make this much. He already had it all worked out. He knew how much he was going to make, and, it's absolutely preposterous. That's not how it works. I mean, it's good to kind of have a goal, sure, but let's be real. Don't start spending the money before you make it, which is kind of almost what this guy was doing. And it led me to realize that many of these indie developers, and I imagine this represents the larger industry as a whole, are coming to this craft from the direction of making money. This is a bit of an issue. So where exactly is this misconception of it being an easy path to riches coming from? Well, for the most part, it's because the success stories are always more prominently featured in media and publications, because nobody wants to hear about yet another failure of an indie game. And there's a lot of unreported failure, as you can imagine. And I remember on my national news, I think it was like a year ago or something, they interviewed a 10-year-old kid who was apparently running his own game dev startup, making a ton of cash. And later, after doing some research, I discovered that actually it was his father that owned the game dev startup, and his son was basically just helping him out. But of course, the media never made that correction in the story, because the reality is they probably knew the truth from the start, but it wasn't as glamorous to report the story that way. I mean, so what's the problem with that? Well, thousands of kids and their parents probably watched that story and thought, well, if that kid can do it, then I suppose my kid can do it as well, or maybe I can do it as well. This kind of delusion starts setting in. Game dev is not that trivial. There's a lot of steps to it. There's a lot of knowledge required. There's a lot of study required. There's a lot of discipline. And if some 10-year-old is pulling it off, well, I mean, it's not impossible, but you'd have to be a very, very exceptional human being, basically, to have that kind of maturity and discipline to do that properly and to find success. And it also kind of started around the time of that indie game movie in 2008, which saw a group of indie devs, notably Phil Fish, Edmund Macmillan, and Jonathan Blow, kind of glorified as some kind of game dev gods, becoming essentially game dev rock stars overnight after the movie screened. And then we have games like Flappy Birds, which saw developer Dong Nguyen reportedly banking $50,000 a day, from a mobile game that realistically any capable game developer could have probably made in a day. That's just the truth of it. So you see the appeal. People think, I can do that. Basically, it's like playing the lottery, if you want to make references to Flappy Birds, which has a very... the path that Flappy Birds took to success is not at all what you think it is. It was largely a meme. It was a joke. And PewDiePie and a few of these YouTubers played it as a joke, and it became viral from that. It's probably like a year after the game even came out. So it's not like these games were planned successes. In fact, that game's success nearly destroyed the life of that Dong Nguyen guy, to the point where he ended up taking the game off the store completely, abandoning all that money because he decided his sanity in life was probably more important. And these kind of stories, it's like hearing about a guy who found a suitcase full of money in a garbage bin. That doesn't mean digging through garbage bins is a viable path to finding success and riches. It's this super edge case. So in response to these highly publicized and often completely unrealistic situations, we saw tens, if not hundreds of thousands of so-called game developers rushing to churn out games like it was the gold rush of 1850s. Now, this flooding and saturation of the market led to what a lot of people started calling the indie-pocalypse, a state of affairs where seemingly good games, objectively good games, or any games for that matter, just couldn't turn a profit, simply because the exposure window provided by the storefronts like Steam just couldn't cater to the wild numbers of games coming through the door, leading to new releases, seeing little to no organic exposure before getting buried by the next batch of shovelware. There was, and still is to some degree, this mindset that if you build it, they will come. However, those who had that mindset quickly realized that this is not at all the case. They were sadly mistaken. And I admit that even myself fell into this mindset early on. You see, I was making games back in the Flash days, long before the indie game movie came out, when it was still very niche to be making games. And at the time, surprisingly, I was actually making some pretty good money off what were fairly simple and amateur-looking games. And as the market shifted towards Steam and mobile gaming, I had this skewed perception that because my shitty little Flash games made okay money, then surely my better games now would do even better. Because that's typically how things should work, right? You iterate on your products, you make them better, and they should make more money. But that's not at all how it necessarily works in the indie game space. Putting in more effort does not at all necessarily correlate to more success. I mean, it helps, absolutely. But it's only one piece of the larger puzzle, which is primarily dominated these days by marketing and PR. You see, back then you didn't have to worry too much about PR and marketing because there were distribution pathways available to you. You just make the games and upload them to this repository, and there was a thing called Flash game distribution, and they would spread it all for you. You didn't have to do any marketing, and then you just sit back and you'd get paid. But those days are long gone. So maybe a bit of that has still kind of followed us into the modern era. I'm not sure exactly. Anyways, though this somewhat delusional perspective has tapered off over the years, there are still plenty of, let's put it kindly, naive, it's not very kindly, people caught up in this get-rich-quick mindset. And I mean, I get emails from people asking me to fund their games or build their games for free because they make guarantees their game is going to be the next big hit. Like, they guarantee it. So please listen to me carefully now, as what I will tell you might save you a lot of heartache, though you may not necessarily like the truth of it. If you still think you can release a game without true passion for the craft, with zero marketing budget or pre or post-launch planning, and expect to bank, please understand you are very, very far from reality. Making money has never been easy. You know, it's why the vast majority of people on this planet just don't have money. Even in modern Western countries, there's so many impoverished people. Yes, some people find loopholes and live a life dedicated to exploiting people and systems. You know, there's a lot of exploitation going on in the game dev industry. Employers exploiting developers, overworking them without any kind of real compensation, to publishers straight up stealing money from developers, you know, locking them out of accounts and stuff like that. So you got to be very careful about that, but that's another topic for another day. If there's one thing you need above all else to find success in a profession, regardless of your vocation, it's passion. You see, if you have passion for the process, even if your game fails miserably, you will still have enjoyed the journey, because it's a very fulfilling journey for the heart and the mind. It's like going for a hike up a beautiful mountain. You don't have to find a treasure chest waiting for you at the top to have enjoyed the journey. There's a lot to have enjoyed about that hike: the view, the process, the challenge. On the other hand, if you're only there to find that treasure chest on the top of the mountain, in it for the money, primarily, well, you'll hate the journey. Because let's face it, game dev is a grueling physical and psychological endeavor. But that's the point, you see. If it was easy, then it probably wouldn't be worth doing. And when you reach the top of the mountain and that treasure chest is empty, you know, you will resent the entire process, the entire effort, and consider it a waste of time. And we'll probably see you on Reddit telling us your story about how you didn't make any money and we should feel sorry for you. Game dev is an absolute dice roll. Yes, you can influence that dice to some degree, but in the end, it'll fall how it falls. And I've seen people spend hundreds of hours, thousands of hours, and invest a lot of money into different projects and make zero profit. I've worked at companies where they had a team of people working, you know, around the clock for a whole year, and the project just went nowhere. And then you'll have some random game that was made in an afternoon go viral and become a smash hit. That's the nature of the beast. And that same unpredictability exists in AAA, where publishers are absolutely scared shitless to work on new IP. Because even with their boardrooms full of 20 executives and heads of advertising and marketing, they still can't make accurate predictions and guarantees as to how a product will do. So when they find a product that does work, they just keep milking it. They just keep milking that teat over and over again until you have, 20 different Assassin's Creeds and, half a dozen Far Cries and whatever else. And it really stifles creativity because nobody is prepared to take the gamble because, it's a bigger risk and game dev takes a lot of time and energy. Now, I'm not telling you any of this because I want to discourage you in any way. I mean, my whole channel and my purpose for making this channel is to educate people, to empower people, to give people the confidence and the tools so that they can enter the space. But I do want people to rein in their expectations and not get ahead of themselves, not put the cart before the horse, so to speak. Understand that success is the exception, not the default. Never has it rained money on this earth. The good things have always been hard to come by, whether it was some merchant in ancient Sumeria or some game developer like me in Australia, or you, wherever you are right now. But if you truly have passion for your work, not just saying you do, but truly having passion, because when the hard times come, and they will come, you'll have a lot better chance at negotiating that terrain and getting through them, because you're enjoying the process, you're enjoying the journey. Where if you're not approaching game dev from a place of passion and true interest, then it's going to knock you back. I've seen a lot of people that they thought they're going to get into game dev because, they wanted the quick cash grab. And they got, 3 months into a project and they realized that, hey, this is not trivial. There's a lot of moving parts and it requires a lot of consistent grind. So be in it for the right reasons and it'll be an awesome adventure that can lead to other places too. I mean, I wasn't planning on making YouTube videos like these. The journey led me here and I approached it with passion, with interest, not for the money. I mean, I have a job. This is my hobby. I don't make a living from these videos, of course not. But I enjoy making them and I enjoy seeing other people enjoy them. That brings me happiness. So I'm able to sustain myself in this way, because if I didn't enjoy the process, then there's no way I would continue doing it, because some of these videos, as you can imagine, they can take pretty long to make, some of them, some of the more complicated ones. And sometimes the YouTube gods, they don't want to play nice or fair, and you can spend all this effort making something and you just don't get rewarded in the way that you would expect, but that's just how it is. But I enjoy the process. But anyways, I guess don't quit your day job is what I'm trying to say. See it for what it is, and don't let your judgment be impaired by prospects of success, because that often happens. People start, visualizing the success way too much, and they're already in their head kind of buying Lamborghinis and stuff. It becomes very irrational and it really problematic. Contemplate on the reality of the situation before diving in and hoping to become the next success story. Most of the people I know personally who have found success in this space, and I know quite a few, they've been trying for years, 5 years, 10 years, more, and some of them have not found it yet. So you've got to ask yourself, are you prepared to put in those kind of time frames with no return? Because that is what the nature of indie dev, game dev is. Because there's other things you can be doing. You don't have to be doing this. There's plenty of ways to make money in this world, and game dev is probably one of the harder ones. But there's not that many things that are as fun as game dev, which is why it attracts so many people, because it's mixing the passion of gaming with creativity and art, engineering, all together in one bundle, which is very, very enticing. And that's why it attracts so many people. Alright guys, well I hope you've enjoyed this video and you've found something positive in it to take with you, and hopefully I've managed to not dishearten you but motivate you and let you reflect on your own approach and how you truly feel about this journey. And if you found this video useful, please do give it a big thumbs up. I really appreciate that. And a big shout out and thank you to my Patreon supporters who have been helping to facilitate this journey of making YouTube videos for you guys to watch and enjoy. Thank you very much. I appreciate your support. See you all in the next video, and as always, all the best on your game dev adventures.